2015 session, what are your expectations? What are your hopes? What do you think will happen?
Well, I hope a lot's going to happen because we have some great opportunities in our state, and we've also got some great challenges. On the opportunity side, we've got the most bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kids in America who want an education, need an education, deserve an education, but the challenge side, we're not financing it. So we've got some great new reforms going on in our schools. We know early child education will work. We know getting some technology to our students will work, but we got to have a way to finance that. And right now, we're not doing that. As you know, the state Supreme Court has held the state in contempt of court, actually, for not getting a better investment package for our children to the tune of several $billion with a B. So that's significant dollars. So one of the first hopes and challenges are to make sure that we finance our kids' education. Legislators are going to be challenged by this, but I'm going to ask them to step up to the plate and meet that challenge. It's the right thing to do for our kids. It's the legal thing to do, and it's the best thing for our economy as well, because as I travel around, today I'm talking to the Kitsap Chamber, we know they're going to tell us they need highly skilled computer technology people, mechanical engineers, great workers at the shipyard, and all of that involves education. So for our kids, for our economy, and to follow the law, we've got to make those investments. Then we got a lot of other work to do on, we hope to improve our transportation infrastructure. You might have read today about the increasing congestion. You certainly have all lived it in the Puget Sound Basin. So we need to make some investments to improve that and just keep what we have, because today our roads and bridges are deteriorating. We've had a 52% reduction in our maintenance budget, just keep our bridges from being unsafe. So, you know, I know what bridges look like in the bottom of rivers. I saw one over the Skagit River last year. Don't want to see that. We've got to have a maintenance budget, so we hope that the legislators will act. Then we've got a host of issues around health, about improving the situation regarding toxicity and the toxins we breathe. We got an air pollution problem we got to deal with, and having a cap on carbon pollution to deal with air pollution and reduce the gas that's acidifying Puget Sound. We've got to tackle that problem. You know, Puget Sound right off here in this bay is 30% more acidic than it was in pre-industrial times, and that's causing problems in our oyster industry. You've heard about our oyster industry having to move some of their operations. They've had to treat their water because of this toxicity. So we've got to get on top of this. And we have actually a good thing in our state, that our state legislature has passed a law that we will reduce carbon pollution for health and climate change reasons, but they haven't come up with a plan to actually do it yet. So I will be proposing a very meaningful and common sense way to reduce carbon pollution this year. So there's three things we're going to work on, and I'm sure there'll be hundreds more.
All of the legislators I talk to, they talk about the needs that we have, and they're heartened by the fact that there's going to be additional revenues, that the economy is improving, but it isn't improving enough to meet the needs that we have. How do you propose creating, closing the gap between what we need and what we have?
Well, unfortunately, there is a significant gap, and what is happening is our economy is improving, and there will be some additional revenues coming in, but they're way, way short by the billions of dollars of the needs of citizens. So citizens want a good education for their children. They want a transportation infrastructure that doesn't leave them stranded, you know, on the freeway all the time. They want a ferry system that's reliable and works safely and on time. And they want clean air. Well, right now we got a revenue structure does not finance that in the state of Washington. We're going to have to look at ways to do that. I have proposed closing some of the loopholes. You know, the tax system's kind of been rigged against working people and in favor of those who have figured out a way to use the tax system by driving a truck through these giant loopholes that we have. So closing some of them is one of the ways to put money into education, and I hope we're going to do that.
What are some other ways that you would
Well,
propose?
there are other sources of revenues. We're looking at all kinds of ideas right now. We haven't settled on any of them to propose to the legislature. I will say that, though, that this is a significant problem, not an insignificant problem. What the court has said is that we need to invest $4 billion over the next few years in the education of our children just to meet our constitutional obligation. And that's a requirement of the law, and it's a necessity for our obligation, more importantly, to our children and to our grandchildren. So when you're talking about billions of dollars, you know, there's no sort of little tin can with gold doubloons in the back of the governor's residence that you can dig up that's gonna plug this hole. So it's gonna be tough, but I believe Washingtonians are committed to the education of our kids. I believe that we understand that our kids need more, not less, if they're gonna compete in the new economy. So we're gonna step up to the plate.
What are your priorities? You've been a ferry commuter before, you know how important that is to this community.
Mhm.
You mentioned pots of gold or doubloons of gold or whatever.
Right.
What are your proposals for, or what are your thoughts on how the legislature and you should handle sustainable ferry funding?
Well, ultimately, long-term, we have to get a more sustainable source of revenue from the general fund of the state of Washington or the transportation budget to keep this system intact. It is a very old system. The boats are aging rapidly. There has been a dramatic reduction in funds to the ferry system from the state government. There has to, at some point, be additional support for the ferry system from the state government. But until we get a transportation budget, we're going to have to focus on reliability of the fleet. As you know, we've had a really rough summer. We've had some mechanical breakdowns. There's been some issues of not being able to get people to the boats to staff them. And we have to come up with a more reliable system. We have a new ferry director, Lynn Griffith, who I'm very excited about. She's now working with me, and I get very engaged in this, to come up with a reliability plan to improve the maintenance of these boats. It's not surprising as these boats get older, they require more maintenance. And we have to come up with a way to get them more maintenance. That may have some downsides on some of our scheduling. Fortunately, not the Bremerton run. But there's some other runs that might have to, look at so we can have time to fix these aging boats. I've got to make sure people can get to work in a timely fashion.
On higher education, obviously we have the community colleges here, Olympic College, and they've filled some of the gap for four-year degrees. Do you anticipate seeing more of that in the future, where the community colleges are stepping up and providing some of the four-year degree programs?
I think there is some more of that going on at several of the community college. But I don't think it's a substitute for financing the four-year colleges either. What has happened, regrettably, in the last 5 years is that the legislature has slashed funding for colleges by over half. As a result, these colleges have had to jack up tuition to really high levels, leaving enormous debt burden on the kids of working families. We've got to address that issue. So I don't think it's just a matter of moving degrees around. We're going to have to maintain, and over time, I hope, increase funding for our colleges so it doesn't end up this huge debt burden on our kids. Now, this is an important issue because, as we talked about, this decision by the state Supreme Court, it's called the McCleary decision, has required the state to put $4 billion into our K through 12 through high school program. Well, it's not going to help those kids if we end up just gutting the program for the colleges and taking money out of the colleges so they can't afford to go to college. That's not a solution to this problem. It is the way the legislature has done this for years before I became governor. They just cut the funding from colleges to preserve it for K through 12. That doesn't solve this problem. It is unacceptable to me to say we're going to cut these programs that help kids on the higher ed system just to get them through high school. So we're going to have to come up with a different solution to this. It's going to take some revenues to, in fact, hold these kids harmless when they go to school so they're not crushed by this debt. We're going to make sure legislators do that.
Do you want to address the rumor that I've been hearing that you're considering running for president?
Well, I think the Kitsap County Chamber of Commerce already has a president, so I won't have to worry about that. Thanks.